All right, we are recording. It's a few minutes after 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. This is the second meeting of the Collier Avenue Traffic Calming Project. My name is Jeff Hammond. I'm a consultant working for the Nashville Department of Transportation, NDOT, who administers these projects and specifically handles the traffic calming program. Tonight, we're going to cover three major topics, I guess, if I were to organize it in such a way. The first part is kind of an overview or a summary of the program itself and how Collier Avenue got into the program. And then the second part will return to the um, uh, plan as it stands right now and look at some of the details of the traffic calming plan that's proposed for the street. And then the last thing we'll do is look at some next steps and kind of set expectations for time frame and those types of questions. I say return because this is the second meeting. We did talk about this project back very late in 2022. So we've done a little more work on this and got what we consider to be more of a final design plan. So following the policy of the program, we're back for a second meeting. This is being recorded, by the way. I guess you know that if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, but it will be available later. Just a little bit of an overview on the traffic calming program. This is a residential street program. We really try to focus on streets that are residential in nature. I know on Collier, it's mostly residential. As you get down towards Nolensville Road, you do have several service type, I wouldn't call it industrial really, more car places and those types of things. And so we're very aware of that. We do focus on physical solutions as opposed to more the educational or the enforcement component. NDOT is responsible for the right of way. So we control things in the public right of way, and that we focus on those physical solutions because we have found that those far and away have the greatest effect on speeding when you actually put something physical in the street. And, traffic has to navigate that. We do focus on speeds as opposed to trying to push traffic somewhere else and keep cars off of your street. We're really not trying to do that. Sometimes that's a byproduct, but our real focus is keeping traffic where it is, but just operating in a more respectful and rational manner there. And then we really don't focus on spot locations. We're trying to effect a change over the entire length of the street. We do like to plug Hub Nashville, which is a great clearinghouse for all things, all requests that you have within Metro government, not just traffic calming and not just NDOT. It covers a lot of different departments and some of the common requests that people have for local government to handle. Hub.Nashville.gov is a great first stop. This is very much of an in-demand program within Metro. You can see here that in our latest application window, we had over 400 streets that applied just the way Collier did. So you're certainly not alone in some of the speeding and other undesirable traffic activity that you've been noticing here. There's a lot of people that are going through the same thing. And so unfortunately, we can't service all of those as quickly as we would like. It's just a huge demand, but this is one of about 50 projects that we do every year. We do 25 selections twice a year. This is how Collier got into the program. It was applied for, and there's an application process that happens that I mentioned, and we take all of those streets that have been applied for and put them through some data collection, and then rank or prioritize those needs based on how they fared in that data collection. That's a combination of how traffic is operating on the street. You see here that 70% of it is really traffic related, mostly related to speed, the speeds that we measure, and then another major portion related to the crash history there on the street. But there's also other non-motor considerations. So 15% for active transportation. That just has to do with, do you have other accommodations? If you have sidewalks, for instance, your score drops because the figure in there is, well, you've got, if you are walking on the street, at least you have a safe place to walk. Collier, you don't have those. So your active transportation score helped you in that sense. And then neighborhood destinations, you actually did really well in this category. It's not a high part of the score, but this has to do with how close are you to things like schools, parks. In your case, you've got a library very close. You've got Coleman Park. You got a community center. So you do have things that you can walk to if the residents feel safe doing that. And so that's the calculus and how those scores come about. In any event, it put Collier into that top tier of needs around the city, and so that's why we're here doing this project on the street. The limits are the entire length of the street from Dobbs to Nolansville. Here's a picture of that. It's maybe a little cryptic. You see your street there in that light blue color. And then the other lines on this map, the red ones, are what we call arterials. They're the highest classification of road in the city. And so parallel to Collier, you see Thompson Lane there, and then you can see at one end of Collier, Nolansville Road headed north-south. I guess that's Foster Avenue is the other one right there behind Coleman Park. The purple lines are collectors. They're just a little bit lower of a classification, but Collier is not colored aside from the blue line that I put on there. And that's because it is a local street, and those are the streets we really typically focused on in traffic calming. You do have some other streets in the area that are kind of similar to Collier in that they have received some attention from the traffic calming program. This is a new tool that NDOT has put together. I like it a lot. And it shows you all of the other streets that it's called the traffic calming tracker. It shows you the streets that have either been applied for, that's the purple lines, or have been accepted into the program but not yet completed, that's the green lines, or the blue lines, the dashed blue lines are streets that have been accepted in the program, have been treated, and you can find speed cushions on today. So if you don't know, the reason I like it, if you don't know where to go look for these, if you're considering having speed cushions placed on your street, you want to go somewhere and see those in action, you can go to one of these blue streets and drive them. You probably know that there are several streets in your area. Closest one may be Louise, just right across the Nolansville Road from you, but Veritas and a couple of others over there in the Radnor neighborhood. Nice is pretty close to you as well, if you know where that is. It comes off South Lake, and it's one of our very newest installations there. So that's another option to go look at as well. We were with Harlan Drive. You may see it right over here, parallels the railroad tracks. We were with them Monday night, and so they're on about the same time frame as you all are, and that they just had their second meeting as well, and we'll be going to ballot soon for theirs. A little bit about that. This is the procedure that we use, the kind of the timeline. We're here at the red circle meeting number 2, and so it looks like we're about 3/4 of the way through the project through the process. From a time standpoint, that's probably not too far off. We're nearing the end of our work in terms of the design, which is what the consultants work on with NDOT, and quickly approaching into the final ballot process in the construction. So that's kind of a wrap on the outline of the program and this project. Let's look at the plans that exist for it. So first of all, we'll define what the components are that we're talking about. The bread and butter of this project, and really of this program for Metro, is the speed cushion. You see some images of that here. Again, you're probably familiar with these because they're pretty close to you in this area, but the summary is it's a preformed, very dense recycled rubber installation that just bolts down to the pavement, and we put them in separate little cushions like this, and not one big piece all the way across the road, and that has to do with some allowances that broken configuration gives to larger wheelbase vehicles like this fire truck, like an ambulance. Those types of vehicles we want to minimize the impact of speed on. We're okay if they go fast down your street. Just we don't want the speed racers and everyone doing that. So that they're just wide enough. These are 6 feet wide, and that's just enough to give them a little bit of relief. That still slows them down even, but not nearly as much. And so we like this configuration. Our emergency responders like this configuration. These are, as I mentioned, 6 feet wide. They come in different lengths, and the different lengths have to do with how aggressive we want to be in that speed control that we're trying to achieve. We've selected kind of the middle length for this. We're turning more to it's a 10.5 foot length. I'll go back here and show you this. And when I say this, I'm looking at the picture on the left, going left to right across the street, across the screen. That's the length that I'm referring to. 10.5 foot length is quickly becoming our standard in very urban areas where we really want to achieve a much lower speed than what we have currently. There's a 7 foot cushion. That's what you see when you go over to Louise. Those are 7 foot cushions. What we're proposing here is a little bit longer. It won't be quite so abrupt as those. We think it'll give a really good result here on Collier. But we do have some discretion in that. There's also a 14 foot length that we use those pretty rarely, but that's even less of a speed reduction. Sometimes we use 2 cushions, sometimes we use more than that. It just has to do with the width of the road. We are very cognizant of the fact that whatever we put out there needs to go pretty well from edge to edge. If we give any more than 3 or 4 feet of pavement without something there, somebody's going to drive around it. They will work hard to drive around these if they can. So, and we know that, and we have some countermeasures to prevent that. In the case of Collier, you've got good ditches there, and the road is really not narrow. Excuse me, it's not very wide at all, and so 2 cushions will be more than adequate to span the width of that road and not let people drive around it. I'm going to show you here a couple of shots on the actual design plans. And what's going to happen is when we get to a point where we've achieved consensus on these plans, we will post these at Nashville.gov, and you and your neighbors can log on and look at those and zoom in and get as much detail as you want to about these. But I'm going to show you the actual design plans, so they're a little technical looking, but we'll walk through them. The purple line, of course, there is Collier Avenue, and what we are proposing, if you can make out the little trapezoid with a C in it, those are our proposed speed cushion locations. So we've got 4 different installations that are planned along the length of that road. What we look at is we kind of go from control point to control point. Typically, we would look all the way from Nolensville Road to Dobbs, but in this case, when we pay attention to the land use and see some of the car places and stuff, we're actually not proposing to install any of those until you actually get in the neighborhood. So we're not going to put anything right up close to Nolensville Road where, you know, those cars driving in and out of those businesses are really impacted. We're gonna leave that alone. What we want to do is stop that traffic once it comes into the neighborhood. So we look at that distance between, you know, the first residential properties all the way to Dobbs, and then divide that by something like 400 to 600 feet. We look for that much spacing in between these applications. We know if we go much more than that, there's a likelihood that cars just speed up in between those gaps, but where there's not speed cushions. And if we go much narrower than that, it just kind of becomes obnoxious for everybody. It's just not a good use of budget. So we found that sweet spot to be something around 500 feet. That's what we're looking to do, and that's why you end up with 4 sets as opposed to 3 sets or 5 sets or something like that. When you see these plans, you'll see more detail. This is the next sheet, and this is as detailed as we get. And so you're able to see generally some properties here, and then our notes would be something like what you have here. So the first speed cushion you would encounter coming from Nolensville Road would be this one, which would be 50 feet west of the driveway at 305 Collier. I know you don't know, you can't picture that, but if you live there or you live in that block and are interested to know exactly where these will be placed, you would have enough information here to go out there and when you walk one evening, kind of pace that off, and you can get a pretty good sense of where these will be placed. So we like to provide neighbors with that much information if they're interested. But a couple of other things we pay attention to in addition to the spacing. One is we don't put them on hills over a certain percentage. I don't think that applies here in Collier. I think it's pretty flat. Nor does the fact that we don't put them on curves really affect you guys either. It's pretty flat, straight street. But driveways do affect pretty much everybody. So we pay attention to that. Lastly, that we don't put any. We try to keep everything at least about 15 feet away from any driveway. I don't think we had any issue here avoiding that. So anyway, that's the first page here, and you can see one of those sets, and then the other three sets all show up on the second page. And I won't read all those out, but they're just kind of distributed all along the length of Collier, all the way up to Dabbs. The last sheet on the plans, and then I'll stop for a minute and see if you got any questions or anything. Is just kind of showing how we lay these out. This is really more for our contractor, but some people find it of interest. Your street it varies a little bit. It's between 18 and 20 feet. Just so you know, that's a pretty narrow street, which we like in traffic calming. We know the wider the street, the higher the tendency people have to want to go fast on it. And so the fact that we're working here on a narrow street is a good thing from our perspective. And it also, as I mentioned, is easier to take that full width up with a couple of 6 foot wide cushions. So this just shows you how we would space those out. What questions do you have on any of that before we get into the final part about the next steps?
I got 2 questions, Jeff. Do you guys go back out after the fact and measure and just, see what the value that these, whatever steps you guys took, what the value was after the fact?
Yeah, I can't say that is done in every case. NDOT really handles that post installation data collection. I know they're doing more of that. And how many sites they're going to do, whether they measure all of those or whether they'll do more of a sample and say, here's generally how these affect. I can't say. We do have some data that speaks to these, particularly on these 10.5 foot cushions. When we first started using those, we did do some travel time data, and they've done speed data collection as well, just to quantify the amount of speed reduction that they're getting. So some of that is done. I can't say that it'll be done on Collier or any other street specifically.
Yeah, I'm just asking just to see, some of the plans that you guys make. Are you basing that off of experience in the Nashville area?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. On those 10 foot cushions, the data that I personally have been involved in the collection was out in the Westmead neighborhood, a street called Breslin, and it was one of the first installations of those 10.5 foot cushions. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't believe me if I told you, but as we did kind of some car following data collection, which isn't just sitting there with a radar gun, we know that as people drive these, they slow down when they come to a speed cushion, and then they naturally are going to speed back up, and then they're going to slow back down when they come to the next set. It's not drastic,
sure,
but certainly that does happen.
Yeah.
And so we were documenting all of that, and the reason I say you won't believe me if I tell you it, because it was right just under a mile of 10.5 foot cushions. the average speed for the data that we collected was like 24.9 miles an hour. So it was right at 25 miles an hour, which is our speed limit, which is kind of our target for that. And at that point, we kind of looked at that and said, the 10.5-foot cushion in a lot of cases in Nashville that are not super urban, they're not tremendously dense. They're more like you all, a little bit more of suburban than some of our very close entering neighborhoods. It's a good product, and it's achieving what we want it to achieve. So we would expect to be somewhere around 25. I would hazard to say it might be slightly less here because of the width of the road and because you are more dense than you are out in West Meade. Those are bigger lots, and again, just the visual there and the further houses are set back and all of that tends to create a higher speed condition. So
yeah,
I think we'll get a good result here.
Okay. Second question: can you go back to the slide that showed the first? Go back one more. Yeah, right there. So my only concern with this, and I don't know if there's anything. Actually, go back down one more. I'm sorry, not that one. The one that we were just looking at.
That one?
No, the one that. Yeah, that one right there.
Sorry, you're on a little bit of a delay too, I think so.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. No, right there. You're good. So my only concern about this, and again, I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, but if you're actually, I think, it's easy to look at this coming from Nolensville Pike, but we get a whole lot of traffic that is coming, the other way. And my main concern with this would be, for folks that stop at the stop sign from Collier and Simmons. And specifically, there's a lot of people that are test driving cars at Action Nissan. There's even there, it hasn't been as bad, probably for the last year, but you have some of their technicians that have been working on cars that have fixed them, and they're out there making sure that what they've done fixed everything. So that's half the battle at times is their employees and their customers that are test driving, just not going out on the interstate, but just coming out of the parking lot and flying down Collier.
Yeah.
And as they're coming back, they stop at that stop sign at Simmons and Collier and gun it one last time before they're getting ready to roll back into Action Nissan. So I can just envision them that happening and just gunning it one last time, and but then braking before that speed hump, and then going about their business. And my house just happens to sit right there where they would be gunning it.
Down on that. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's possible. Certainly they're doing that today. And I guess the only difference here would be if they did still gun it one last time, now they would have to slow down significantly before encountering that speed cushion. My hunch is that they probably find somewhere else to test drive. If I had to guess,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to want to do that, especially if it's kind of a performance type of a car that sits low and is really not going to fare well at high speeds on these. I would hope. I mean, this is a rare case where we wouldn't mind if we did see some deflection of traffic to another place. You got Knowles Road, you got Thompson Lane.
Mhm.
I know at peak hours it's crowded, but Thompson Lane, a good part of the day, if they want to go over there and open it up, that's not good. But I'd rather that happen than it be on your street.
Sure.
I'm guessing that might happen. That it might just take them off altogether. But I'll take a look at that. I mean, I hear your concern. And it's I guess anything is possible, but I'll go back and take a look at that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And again, I don't know, because that is a fairly small, and I get where you're coming from as it comes from Nolensville Road, because you don't want to put it out there outside of the neighborhood, and then you couldn't really add another one in there because it would be too close together.
It's really tight. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all I had.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions there. If you think of anything, just holler. I'll go ahead and talk about the next step for this. So barring any concerns or emails we might get after the meeting or anything like that, which is very rare, about the plan itself, then we will consider consensus on doing these speed cushions on the street, and we'll go to a ballot process. This will ensure that everybody who owns property on the street has a say if they choose to exercise that. So the way we do it is, I know this little image down here is not your street, but it just represents the concept of how we ballot. So we're going to send cards out, much like the one you may have received for this meeting, to every homeowner that's on the street from Knowlesville Road to Dobbs along the length of the project. And by that, I'm saying if your property shares the right-of-way line with Collier Avenue, you will get the street. If you live off of it, down the street, 2 doors down, on a cul-de-sac off of it, whatever, you won't get that. This is only for eligible for the residents on Collier. It also is residents, so we're not going to send any to Action Nissan or whatever the name of the car dealership is. That's not a residential property in the limit, so they will not be balloted. And that's true for if there are churches, if there are vacant lots that, according to tax rolls are vacant, none of those will receive ballots. This is just for homeowners. And it is for the owners. So we will be sending this to the owner of the property within that. So if you're renting or if a neighbor is renting and they say, hey, I didn't get a card, well, the reason is because it went to the landlord's property. That may be in Nashville, that may be some other state. We're aware of that. So that's how we ballot those. Once the ballot goes out, and what it looks like is, like I mentioned, that card that you got, you see an image of it here on the left side of the screen. One is the front, one is the back of the card. The top one's the back of the card. It's what it looks like, and it's got a QR code, and you scan that code, and it's going to take you to a Nashville.gov page, which is the image below it, and that is actually the ballot. You just enter your name and address and whether you're for it or not, and at the end of 6 weeks, we close that ballot and then tally the results. And if 2/3 of the people who have vote for the plan, we'll move it forward, order the materials, and get ready to install it. You don't necessarily have to do it online. Along with that, when you get that card, there is a phone number. So if you want to just call somebody, you'll be calling NDOT. They can walk you through that, and they can log your vote that way as well. And then I guess the last thing here is it is 1 vote per owner. I don't remember in this list if there's anybody who owns multiple properties, but if a single property owner owns more than 1 property, they will just be given one opportunity to vote. So other than that, it's one vote per household, not per resident. So if you and a roommate or a spouse or whoever have a disagreement over that, you guys got to figure it out yourself. You only get to vote 1 time per house. So anyhow, any questions on the ballot process?
Does that say 66%?
66% need to be in favor. And again, that's of the.
Oh, right. Okay. That's Okay, I got you. So 2 out of 3 would work. Yeah.
2 out of 3. And that's of the people we get. So
Sure.
If a very low number vote, that's okay. We're looking for 66% of the people that vote to be in favor of it.
Got it.
We're getting pretty good participation out of these. I'd say we're in the 30 to 40%, which I think is better than a national election. So
yeah, no,
I guess people care more about traffic calming than who their senator is or whatever. All right, well, very good. The last thing I will cover is just kind of some aspects of the time frame from this point. So we'll take a look at that one little design issue there and see if we feel like we need to adjust that. And we like to ask for 2 to 3 weeks at this point just to get the ballots out. Probably won't even take that long. We'll get those plans posted and get those ballots out in the next couple of weeks. And then that voting period, as I mentioned, stays open for 6 weeks. If it comes back and it passes, we would then order those materials. That's another 2 months or so. And then we finally ask for about another 2 months as we receive the materials and then get those scheduled. One of Metro's on-call contractors does do the installation. They're the group that does all the pavement markings and stuff around town. So they work those in. A lot of times when it's raining, they can't do striping, so they'll do speed cushions. But anyway, that puts us, we're starting to look more towards the middle to late in the summer at this point. So I just like to say that to give you some expectation that it's not going to be next week. We still got some time to go on this, but it's kind of an idea of the time frame we're thinking about. There's my contact. I'm Jeff Hammond. I'm the bottom one there. Gil Thomas is our program manager at Metro. He's a Metro employee there, and so. But feel free to reach out to either one of us or both of us if you think of other questions or have any comments. I'd be glad to get back to you on those. Anything else before we break up tonight?
I'm good.
All right. Well, again, we certainly appreciate you taking the time again to join us for a second meeting. And again, this is being recorded. And if you encounter any of your neighbors that have an interest and want to sit in on this session in a recorded way, that'll be available through Metro's Channel 3. They have a YouTube channel where all of their broadcasts are documented. So feel free to tune into that. With that, I will again thank you and wish you a good evening. And, take care.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.